Happy Human Design New Year! The sun has rolled into gate 41, activating the trait of contraction and decrease, which is correlated to the start codon in our genetics and marks the start of a new solar year. The pressures of this cycle may have you daydreaming and fantasizing about what you want to experience in life, and could have you taking on a role to lead and guide others. We continue to have amplified willpower and emotionality. There's also incredibly intensified pressure to start something new. These are all pressures and qualities that this cycle of the human design weather for January 21st to 27th, 2026 bring. Hello, and welcome to the Human Design Weather or Not podcast with me, Margot Fraser. All right, listen, we are just a year out from the change in background frequency that influences the larger themes for humanity. And boy, are we seeing the impact of that. We have the transit field that I talk about in these weather reports, but there are also global cycles, and we've been in the current cycle since 1615. That's coming to an end mid-February of 2027, when we will move into a completely different background frequency and a new global cycle. So all that's going on now has to do with the breakdown that's occurring to make way for this new cycle. I'm going to offer an overview webinar about this 2027 transition on January 30th. So I'll pass on the info about how to register for that when I've got that all ready. The transit chart for this cycle also sets the tone for the full year. So I'm going to talk about that more in the long-term transit section of this video because it gives us an idea of what's ahead for us coming up this year. This cycle begins on January 21st at 5:54 p.m. going until the 27th at 6:39 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Universal time coordinates, that's coming in January 22nd at 12:54 a.m. going until the 27th at 1:39 p.m. So remember to convert that to your own time zone so you know when it starts and ends for you. We always start with the Sun-Earth activations because that's 70% of the conditioning field. We have the Sun moving into gate 41, activating the trait of contraction and decrease in the root center, the bottom square of the chart. The root center is a motor and a pressure center, bringing that adrenalized drive. Gate 41 is part of the collective, abstract, experiential way that's generally about going through cycles of experiences one at a time. Really going into it and being in it until it comes to its conclusion. Then reflecting on it, learning from it, and sharing the wisdom so that others don't have to start from scratch. And then never repeating that same experience again. So the experiential circuitry, it does not want to repeat an experience that you've already had. The pressure this trait of contraction brings is to enter into a new experiential cycle. And the first step is daydreaming and fantasizing. So this is what you might find yourself doing this cycle. And here it's innocent fantasy. This is the gate as well. It says, I'm hungry to feel something new. It can also be recognition of literal hunger. The keynote for this trait says the limitation of resources, which maximizes development of potential. All the potentials of human experiences for all the feelings we can have are encapsulated in this trait. But you can imagine how overwhelming it would be to have all the fantasies possible running around in your mind at the same time. You can't actually maximize the one potential that's most of value to you if you're trying to manifest all your dreams at once. Trying to do that can lead to emotional health issues. This is a trait that points at the emotional center. So the gate of contraction and decrease is about paring back to the one that you really want to put your energy into. Which dream is really realistic and of value to put your focus on? Now, how do we know the one to focus on? Well, it's a process. As I just mentioned, gate 41 is pointing at gate 30, the trait of desire, of the fates, the clinging fire, of recognition of feelings in that solar plexus center, the emotional center. So there's going to be pressure to fulfill your desires. That emotional center, remember, is the motor that generates the ups and downs of the emotional waves, and it's also an awareness center. So this is where the awareness of which one of those dreams, what is the real desire, that's where it's going to come in. Getting that clarity on what feeling, what experience you're really yearning for then takes time, takes patience, because the emotions go up and down. It takes time to get clarity. If you don't have gate 30, there's not going to be clarity about what that true desire is. So again, patience. Watch that you're not just jumping into making one of those dreams happen from the mind. If you don't have gate 30 in your chart, it's going to come eventually through the transit field or through people that pass through your aura. Having said that, it can be a great time to use this energy if it's correct for you, according to your own human design strategy and authority, to allow for the dreaming, engage your imagination. What experience, what feeling would you like to manifest this year? It can be exciting. Just be patient. And the contraction process will lead to the desire that's both grounded, reasonable, and also of value. There's a discernment that will occur in that clarity between what is real and really can be manifested and what is just really fantasy. Enjoy the fantasy, but leave it at that. Remember that what follows contraction is expansion. By the way, this fantasizing can also include sexual fantasies. This is part of the intimacy circuitry. So there could be the urge to try something new that way as well. Just take the time to ensure that it's really aligned for you. The experiential circuitry tends to bring expectations and then disappointment when those expectations and dreams are unfulfilled in the way the mind made up they would be. So you might experience that or see that playing out around you as well. This pressure to start something new and dream and fantasize and for the decrease and contraction of resources will be extremely amplified this cycle, as we have Mercury and Venus also sitting in gate 41 at the start of the cycle. Now they're going to move out by mid-cycle, but then Mars will move into gate 41 on the 25th. There are some other gates as well contributing to the pressure to start something new that I'll talk about again when we get to the long-term transits. Gate 41 is being grounded in the Earth's position, gate 31 in the throat center. This is the trait of leading and influence. The throat center, that uppermost square in the chart, is the center for communication, expression, and manifestation. Gate 31 is part of the collective logic circuitry that wants to establish the patterns, the formula, the trends that will carry us into the future with security. If I do this, this, and this, I'm going to get that result. Its keynote says the law of friction, whether active or passive, that engenders transference and thus influence. This is a democratic leadership gate, and leaders need to be able to influence others to see the direction into the future they're speaking about and put it into action. A leader on their own can't really make it happen, right? You need your followers, you need support for that. That's the influence, right? You transfer the information to the followers, to the supporters. This is also a trait that can support you in guiding others, helping them to understand how to get from point A to point B, from here to there. This is a trait that operates properly when it is elected or at a more personal level invited to lead or to guide. You might hear yourself or others talking about the way to a better future, to greater security, and trying to influence others to engage and support this. You might feel the pressure to lead or guide others, so make sure it's correct for you before you commit to providing that. It's important to be invited to lead and guide, and that it's supported, that it's not just imposed on others. When we look at the Sun-Earth positions together, they bring the sharing of fantasies and dreams for the future and sharing guidance. What you dream of now may eventually be realized in a way that allows you to guide others. At the same time, you may hear others or find yourself creating expectations in their guidance and trying to influence others from what is not realistic or reasonable. This can be leaders that are influencing their followers to try and manifest that leader's fantasies. All right, let's look at our channels now. A reminder that when the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't have it already in their chart is receiving activation of the related traits and qualities. So it has a big impact that way. We have our long-term channel that came in December and will be with us until May 13th. This is being created by the nodes of the moon, and they're creating the channel of community, a design of a part seeking a whole. So there's going to be this pressure that comes with it to find your place in community, to find your place in the totality. And that can bring a sense of either belonging or not belonging. The North Node is in gate 37, the trait of friendship and family in the emotional center. And the South Node is in gate 40, the trait of deliverance and aloneness in the ego center, the heart center. This is tribal. And the theme of the tribe is mutual support. So it's going to bring this energy and pressure to be supported and to support others. Because it's in the nodes, it's also what we see when we look out in the world. We're going to see those who are supported and those who are not. This is also the channel of the marriage contract, of bargains and agreements in general. So there's going to be an emphasis on fairness in relationships. Expect to experience and see the themes of loyalty and betrayal, jealousy and friendship, possessiveness and being very philanthropic, negotiation of contracts and breakdown of agreements that aren't fair. It can bring this sense of being taken advantage of, right? When bargains aren't fair, if you're on the end that's not getting a fair bargain, that's going to be, I don't feel supported, and I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. There's going to be more pressure to come together in family and community, and the tribal traits operate emotionally on a ratchet wave. So if you don't get supported, it ramps up, and then it can ramp up some more, and then it can ramp up some more, and eventually there can be this real explosive emotional outburst. And all the places where one wasn't supported, that's just going to come tumbling out. All right. We have heightened willpower, heightened emotionality while this is in place. So willpower, that can be a really pushy energy. Prove yourself. Show that you're of value. Get things done. Make it happen. Right? Most people do not have the willpower center activated in their chart. So it's coming in a very amplified way. And then we've got the highs and lows of emotionality. With that emotionality, events that impact communities, for better or worse, are going to have heightened emotional reactions. We may see people joining communities that are not aligned for them at all, out of just wanting to have some sense of belonging. There's also, though, the opportunity to find the belonging within yourself, to understand in a greater way that living your unique design gives you your place in the totality. Now, as the channel of contracts and bargains, this is also about trade negotiations and resources, whether that's at a smaller level or at a global level, this for that. So it does bring an emphasis on trade agreements in the collective, whether they're fair or whether they're not. Things being negotiated and agreements that are also falling apart. All right, we've got 3 channels that are being created by the transit of the moon. So they're just little tasters because the moon only activates a gate or a trait for about 10 or 11 hours, give or take. I'll just go through these ones briefly so we have more time to talk about the long-term transits and what's ahead in the year. So this one's coming in on January 24th at 9:14 a.m., going until 7:04 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. UTC coming in January 24th at 4:14 p.m., going until the 25th at 2:04 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 51. The trait of shock in the ego center. That's that motor again that brings the willpower. It's connecting with gate 25, the trait of the spirit of the self, of innocence and universal love, being activated by Neptune in the G center. That's the center that's associated with love, identity, and direction in life. Together, they create the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first. It's going to operate in a pulse, and it's about stretching yourself ultimately, taking a deeper leap into your own potentials, your own sense of self, accepting yourself in a greater way, and allowing that to bring a greater sense of being centered. That's the opportunity. There's also an opportunity it brings to be able to adapt to the shocks that are coming in. However, how we most often see it play out in the world is the design of needing to be first, being competitive instead with yourself, being competitive with others. So it will amp that up. Next up, we have coming in January 24th at 7:04 p.m., going until the 25th at 4:49 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. UTC coming in the 25th at 2:04 a.m., going until 11:49 a.m. So swinging right from the channel we were just in. Now we have the moon moving into gate 42, the trait of completion and growth in the sacral center, connecting with Jupiter's position. Gate 53 in the root center, the trait of beginnings. Together, they create the abstract experiential channel of maturation, a design of balanced development. This is the energy to go through cycles, beginnings, middles, and ends towards gaining wisdom and growth. It brings a cyclical nature to the operation of every other trait. There's going to be an opportunity it brings to start something new or take that next step in an experience or bring something to completion. Of course, you want to follow your own strategy and authority, or the timing will be off for those things. Last up, we have coming in January 25th at 4:50 a.m., going until 2:52 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. UTC coming in January 25th at 11:50 a.m., going until 9:52 p.m. We have the moon moving into gate 3, the trait of ordering in the sacral center, connecting with gate 60, the trait of limitation in the root center. Together, they create the channel of mutation, a design of energy that fluctuates and initiates. Here we have the old, represented by gate 60 and its limitations, meeting the new of gate 3. If the pulse comes through, this is individual and it operates in the pulse, there's the potential to break out of the old limitations and into something new. Now, when there's change like that, it's going to bring the need to reorder things. And that tends to be a chaotic process. So sometimes we refer to gate 3 as the gate of chaos. But it's all about starting to get things into that new order after the change or that pulse has come through. So there is the potential opportunity for a pulse of something new to come through. Just keep in mind, you have to run it through your own strategy and authority, and also that you have no control over when or if a pulse will come through. All right, that brings us to our long-term transits. The long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're with us for longer periods of time, years in some cases. So your not self mind could start to think they're part of you, even when it's not something you have in your own design. And then eventually when that transit moves on, that can be confusing to the mind. Last cycle, we had quite a few line changes, but this cycle, everything's stable other than Jupiter will move into a new line towards the end of the cycle. So I'm just going to leave that one to talk about in our next cycle's weather forecast. Now, this New Year's chart, as I mentioned, sets the tone for the themes that we'll see play out this year generally. So I'm going to go through the full chart this time with the themes that are here, not only for this cycle, but for this human design year. Remember that the transit field brings the traits that have the potential to homogenize us to their conditioning, to that transit field conditioning. And so it's what we see play out in the world where most people are not self, right? They're not aware, rather than living their unique designs. So for a baby born at the time of this transit, when it comes in, yeah, this is going to be their true personality side of their chart. For the rest of us, it's just conditioning pressure that can either run us or we can observe and learn from it as aware beings. So right off the top, I mean, look at this chart. You can see the number of detriments that are there, the little downward pointing triangles there. And we have 5 of the 13 activations in the root center. So this is a cycle and a year that's going to be very, very pressurized. We look first to the definition to see what the strongest themes are. Those are the channels and the hanging gates in the defined or colored in centers. So we have our 3740 channel of community that we talked about already being activated by the nodes of the moon. We also have the moon in gate 37. Then we have gate 36, the trait of crisis in the emotional center. So this is a cycle and a year of amplified emotionality and willpower, the ego that can deliver what's needed to the community, or the possessive ego that wants for itself, that wants to take advantage. The emotionality of feeling supported or taken advantage of in the tribal traits, and the rise on the wave of expectations of what an experience will bring crashing down into disappointment when they're not met, that's held in the gate 36. What does that mean for you? Well, watch that you're not setting expectations with that gate 36 and understand the pressure of emotionality and willpower that's going to be there. So we have crisis in community. That's the definition that's there and setting the tone for the year. The nodes set the context, the environment for everything else. Those communities can be groups, organizations, and what we're already seeing in the world, country relationships. We're looking at the trade and agreements within communities. Those seen to be unfair will start breaking apart. The 37th gate of friendship is in line 4 in the exaltation, our one exaltation that's in there, where those that exhibit exemplary behavior and the highest principles will be seen as leaders over those who would traditionally be seen as the leaders. Gate 40 brings an ego that will organize work to balance work and rest. That's in its exaltation. That's something at a personal level could really support you. At the collective level, we're more likely to see the detriment of those providing resources, putting their energy into anything that those that are stroking their ego want them to provide. So it's a dilution and actually can result in decreased productivity. Gate 36, crisis, in line 6, called justice. It's in detriment, though, so injustice. Sirius, Saturn, right? Saturn's a Sirius frequency, can bring forward the harsh realities of the injustices in our communities and their consequences. Specifically, the detriment says a profound sorrow and cynicism that is not diminished by understanding that darkness is self-annihilating. The sorrow or cynicism that comes with seeing that despite the correctness of feelings, there's always crisis. Now, darkness here refers to ignorance. So there's likely to be this cynicism in the world arising out of the injustices being committed in our communities and countries that are rooted in ignorance. The 36 is also going to bring pressure to actually enter into something new, like do it. Now, the pressure to enter something new is incredibly strong this year and for the start of this cycle as well. So for yourself, you're really going to want to hone in on your strategy and authority to ensure if you enter into something, it's really correct for you and not out of this enormous pressure of the transit field. And again, this is a theme for the full year. So, I mean, look at this. We've got the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, all sitting in gate 41, the pressure to start a new experience, beginning with that fantasy that we talked about. This is also, again, that gate of contraction and decrease. It does point here to the potential for a big contraction of resources. Now, at the personal level, it's about engaging your imagination to that fantasy to find a way to navigate through that. We add that to Saturn and the 36 we just talked about with its pressure to actually go into the experience. Then we have Jupiter sitting in gate 53, the trait of beginnings in the root center, expanding, right? Jupiter expands, expanding the pressure to start something new, to begin something. Now, it's in line 4 that's called assuredness, where you can work through the awkwardness of new beginnings with confidence. Yeah, okay, that was a little bit embarrassing, but this is what's going on. It's okay. I can live with it. I can work through it. What we're more likely to see in the world, though, is the detriment, the lack of assuredness. People that cannot deal with the embarrassment and awkwardness that comes from new beginnings. And then they jump out of what they started into something new, and they just keep jumping from one thing to another. We have Mars, which can be hasty and immature, sitting in gate 60, the trait of limitation, and is really about accepting limitations until that pulse for mutation comes through, that pulse for change. But there's still going to be a restlessness to break through limitation. So it is going to bring this restless energy to it. It's another one in detriment, and it's in line 3 called conservatism. While the exaltation brings an adaptability and can, let's say, it can maintain its cool, let's say, in the face of limitations, that's the quality it brings, we have the detriment. And the detriment says ego-gratifying self-interest that ignores limitations and suffers predictably. Energy which ignores limitations and pays the price. So we're going to see those in our communities, remember that's our context, that ignore the limitations that are there and try to force change. And there's going to be suffering as a result of that. Let's look at gate 41 more closely here. Look at all those detriments. Oh man. So the Sun and Mercury in line 1 in detriment, Venus in line 4 in detriment, and then Pluto in line 2. Again, we've got contraction and decrease. Line 1, let's start with that, is called reasonableness. In its exaltation, it brings this cool energy with the imagination to make the best out of very little. What you want to experience needs to be reasonable and of value. So there's just this cool quality. Let's wait and pare it down eventually. However, in the detriment, it says a tendency and understanding to assume capability, leading to strain. The hothead. Can you hear the ego in that, right? It's an energy that's unreasonable. If I can dream it, I can manifest it, right? Doesn't matter how far out it is. So the frequency of the Sun, right? It's what we're really radiating out. This is the conditioning pressure. Radiate out your fantasies, your dreams, but it's going to have unaware people expressing through this hot-headedness and things that are unreasonable within our communities. So I want to have this or that, and it will be things that are unreasonable demands. Unreasonable demands in trying to make agreements. And it's going to put a strain on those communities, those countries, whatever group it might be. With Mercury, this is also what the homogenized world is going to be talking about. Venus is in line 4 called correction. Again, it's in detriment. Now, it has a developmental theme, so something that you learn over time that says successful adaptation to limitation. Now, wouldn't that be nice with Mars also being in that trait of limitation? That'd be a nice compliment. The exaltation says survival of the fittest and its eventual flourishing. The energy for adaptation and a deep feeling for survival. So the journey to have a new experience, it can be a long one, right? To get from the start to the finish. And this trait in its exaltation brings the capacity to adapt and course correct as you go through it. But we have the detriment, lack of correction. So it says the expenditure of energy on maintaining relationships rather than on correction. In times of decrease, weak associations are shunned as costly, no matter how attractive. The energy which fuels holding on to feelings rather than adapt. Well, this is social Venus. Sticking with your friends and those you know is more important than adapting to stay on track within the desired experience. You know, I'm not going to do it my way. Oh, they want to do it that way. Sure, let's go ahead. So you don't get the experience you were meant to get. It can result in a lot of frustration. We might also see so-called corrections that will be made to what's been known to uphold a false narrative. Venus can sometimes be bringing through some propaganda. Pluto is sitting in line 2 called caution, with a developmental theme that says humanism tempered by pragmatism. Pluto's conditioning is that it's through starting something new that you'll find your inner truth. Right? That's the transit field, the conditioning, homogenization, pressure. So we've got to start something new. That's how we're going to get to the truth. Not if that's not your Pluto in your chart. And the exaltation. This is about being practical with what you dream of experiencing. Do you really have the resources to bring it to fruition? So you may dream of, helping people, poor people in another country, but realistically, you don't actually have the resources to manifest it. So that dream has to be put aside for something that is realistic. In the detriment, the ego gets involved in needing to be recognized for just having that dream for humanity, even though it's not realistic or practical to manifest. But a lot of resources can end up being invested in that dream that just ends up depleting resources with nothing to show for it. We're going to go to Mars. Just think of the amount of money and resources that have gone into that. Well, the new frequencies that are coming in 2027, the new shift in background frequency, I don't think that's going to happen. With all of this, I think we're likely to see some groups, some countries, what have you, investing a lot of resources into things that are never going to be manifested, but may leave the rich richer and the poor poorer, not respecting limitations that are there and instead rushing into things that result in losing and restructuring of alliances. At the personal level for yourself, again, follow your strategy and authority. Be conservative with your resources. Stay cool-headed and practical, even though you likely won't be able to stop from daydreaming with all that 41 pressure. So just enjoy that part. Understand what's happening. Maybe you have the 41 in your own design. That's okay. That's part of who you are. You're meant to do some daydreaming. Enjoy it and then bring it back to Earth. All right, we have Uranus sitting in gate 8, the individual trait of contribution and holding together. It's the voice of I know I can contribute or not. It's in line 4 called respect. This is where individuals may bring their unique contributions out to the community in an influential way and be seen as a leader, even though they may not technically be the leader. We could also see individual contributions that are not out of true creativity, but instead out of the ego need to impress. Uranus can be sidetracking. So there could be contributions. I can do this. I can contribute this, that just take people in the community completely off track. Neptune sitting in that gate 25. It's been there for a while now. This trait of the spirit of the self, innocence, and universal love in the G center. It's in line 2 called the existentialist, bringing that pressure to be here now, not worrying about what will be or what was. Now, if the ego gets involved, there can be a wanting to be recognized for one's so-called selfless actions. Now, Neptune really gets into the depths of things. It veils and it unveils. And we're going to see, well, this has been here for a while. We are seeing veils being lifted, masks coming off, true motivations being exposed, where actions had been presented as being for the highest good. What's it really about? Personally, it's support to be here now and be in the space of loving all things equally. That's how it can support you. This is the space and place where you can deal with any shocks that come into your life, and it can support you in accessing your individual spirit and being more centered and accepting of yourself. Finally, we'll go back up to the Earth here, which I talked about at the start of the weather. It's in gate 31 again, called the trait of influence. And here, what do you know? Another detriment. It's in line 1 called manifestation, that has a developmental theme that says influence cannot exist in a vacuum. This is a leadership gate. In other words, you can't influence anyone if you don't have anyone following you or supporting you. Its exaltation says the sun does not and cannot hold back its light and thus its influence on every life, the natural expression of leadership. The detriment, which is what we have, says the absorption of light, that in darkness can only promise manifestation, the unnatural expression of leadership. A leader can bring patterns that lead us into light or darkness. Both polarities can be there, and sometimes it's a matter of perspective and how you judge what they say is the way forward. What do followers do? If they like what the leader is doing, they venerate them. If they don't, they demonize them. In the exaltation, we're being led into a more secure future. In the detriment, which is what we have, it's a more insecure future. Okay, this true security comes from within you. Following your strategy and authority, not getting caught up in this homogenizing frequency. So within our context of community, we're going to have leaders that are bringing us into a more uncertain and insecure future. Okay, so I'm not going to try and sugarcoat things here. It's going to be a rocky year out there in the world. It doesn't mean you have to be pulled into it. For you, again, be conservative with your resources. Watch that you're not jumping into things out of expectations of what it will bring you. Stay present to what is and build that confidence in following your own strategy and authority. So I'll go into more of what this is all about and leading into during my webinar on January 30th about the 2027 transition. And again, I'll get the info on that to you as we get closer to that date. That brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you just want to understand the basics of the body graph, what's the black and the red about, the different geometric shapes and so on, feel free to grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. If you enjoy these podcasts, it's always supportive to me if you can give it a like, and if it's correct for you, to subscribe. All right. Okay. So be patient. Enjoy the dreaming without the expectations, and watch that you're not making emotional decisions. Even those of us that are defined emotionally, we've got to wait until we get to neutral to get that clarity. Foster that sense of internal belonging as best you can, and witness the pressure to start something new that might be there, depending on your own design. Following your own strategy and authority to know when or if the timing is right to act on that. Okay. Have a great cycle, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.